Update to my quarantine status. I am missing the privilege to be able to travel more than ever. I think this being stuck inside and not having the freedom to go wherever we want makes me think even more about the potential of being able to travel in the first place. Welcome back to yet again another video. Ryan here. A couple of years ago, back in 2018, I took my first trip abroad over to Europe. I traveled all throughout the UK and parts of the Netherlands with a couple good friends of mine, and it was the most amazing, magical adventure I have taken so far. So I encourage all of you to plan some sort of trip as soon as you're able and as soon as we are at liberty to leave the house once again. So upon getting back from my first trip abroad, I decided to write an article on Medium about the 8 lessons that I learned while traveling abroad for the first time, which was a really fun experience for me because I ended up getting this article featured on The Ascent, which is a well-known publication on Medium's site. So I will be sure to include a link in the description down below for you guys to read up on the original article. But I thought for this video's sake, I thought it would be a good idea to relive the past and just hype myself up for the potential of traveling, hopefully sooner than later, and the lessons that we can learn when doing so. Yeah. So all in all, traveling to new parts of the world can be one of the most valuable tools to personal growth out there. In short, pack your bags, put aside your self-help books, and get on the next flight to anywhere you have yet to go. So halfway through this month-long trip that I took with my two buddies, Jake and Ian, we found ourselves walking through the streets of Amsterdam through one of those like book fairs. I came across this fancy journal that I ended up buying, and it has served to be one of my most trusty tools for expressive writing to this day. So for the remainder of the trip, I would open it up every day and write down my thoughts, but along with that, most importantly, the lessons that I had learned. So starting with lesson number 1, mistakes are never actually mistakes. Out of all the memories that were made on this trip, most that come to mind are magical and amazing in every way. But going out of your home country for the very first time, you can almost always wager that at least one thing is going to go absolutely embarrassingly wrong. Now, during the event of something happening that is less than ideal, let's face it, in the moment it's no fun to deal with at all. But what I was reminded of so clearly is that no mistake or accident is without its underlying value. And to give a fun example, both Jake and I unintentionally lost all of our money at separate points within the trip. For Jake, it was when we had just gotten back from Amsterdam and he realized that he had lost his debit card while waiting in line to buy burritos at a Mexican food joint at one of the London train stations. Yeah, don't do that, by the way. British Mexican food is about as good as it sounds. Whereas for me, it was while we were in Liverpool on our way to Edinburgh, Scotland, when I had checked my bank account and found out that I had been hit by fraudulent activity and had all of my funds swiped. Wonderful. Thankfully, halfway through the trip, Ian's dad, Eric, joined us to celebrate his 50th birthday, and luckily showed up at the perfect time to, let's just say, save us kids from our financial demise. And Eric, if you're watching this video right now, I have to say thank you. You rock, and we couldn't have done it without you. So we got lucky by having our friend's dad there to cover us on the rest of the trip. But having that be our only feasible option, we had to learn quickly how to not rely on material things to make our trip as amazing as can be. So because of that, I learned how to be grateful for what I already had. Along with that, I had to learn how to budget under pressure, because though I had no idea whether or not I was going to get all my money back, which I in fact did once I returned home, I had made a promise to Eric that I was going to pay him back for every penny that I had borrowed. And as odd as it is to say, I'm really glad that we hit these setbacks, because it's the bumps in the road that are the building blocks to bumping up our character after all. But on the flip side, lesson number 2, it's very important to learn how to say this deeply astute yet very simple phrase. F it. You know, for emphasis sake, let's just get rid of the beep. Learn how to say fuck it more often. Learning how to say this magical phrase will more often than not be your biggest game changer when exploring new frontiers. Now, I'm not saying to be dumb and go out on a whim with the most dim-witted actions you can think of, but I do encourage you to try new things and challenge yourself with opportunities that may initially bring up fear or uncertainty of any kind. Because I promise you it will change up things in ways you cannot imagine. Now, this whole trip was originally just an idea that was ruminating in this broke-ass college student's head for years. And it wasn't until about a month after I got out of my last long-term relationship when I decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to Europe. But I do owe a lot to Ian, who basically just called me up and said, yo, dude, you're coming to Europe. To which I replied with, hi. From there, I hit up Jake to join us and saved as much money as I could for the next 6 months while I waited patiently and set my intention on going on the most mind-expanding trip that I had ever been on. And that's exactly what I did.
Not bad.
So to shed some more light on the significance of this practice of saying fuck it, Jake and I were absolutely ecstatic for the entire duration of our building anticipation, even on the flight to London, on which we could not sleep to save our lives. Let's fast forward to the second day on our trip when Jake got a late onset case of cold feet. I just remember asking him what was on his mind because he all of a sudden seemed so uneasy and unenthusiastic for some reason. To which he replied with something along the lines of, dude, I shouldn't have come here. I should be home working and making money. To be honest, Ian and I were just as surprised as he was. So in turn, he did some research, made some calls to find out if he could get a refund on his Airbnb portions and basically the rest of his flights so that he could come home early. I'm sure that Jake would agree now when I say that thankfully none of those refunds were gonna work out, and he was basically stuck to finish off the rest of the trip. So it took a couple days, but by the next time that I asked if he was glad that he decided to stay with us, his enthusiasm was through the roof and he was having the time of his life. By the time we were on our way home, it was as if this never happened, and I'm absolutely convinced that this trip will forever be considered a pivotal time of growth and transformation for us all. This brings us to lesson number 3. Do yourself a favor, put the phone down, and learn to unplug more often. So even to this day, but especially back then, I've been told by many individuals that I am addicted to my device. I think we're all guilty of it from time to time, but after roaming around Europe and having the urge to take pictures, videos, Instagram stories of pretty much everything, it came to be a lot more noticeable and apparent how much time I had been spending on my phone for useless information and soul-sucking entertainment. So I hate to admit that no, this lesson did not make me completely eradicate my cell phone use, but it did do these 2 things. Number 1, with the conscious effort and attempt to constantly keep my phone in my pocket unless I absolutely needed it, I became conscious of what was happening around me in multiple ways. So due to this realization, I became so much more aware of the true depth and beauty that comes with a magnificent view, for example. And so truly experiencing it for what it was rather than seeing it through my phone's camera lens and taking in another diluted piece of imagery that's associated with the thought, damn dude, I bet I'd get a whole 20 likes if I was to post this right now. And on top of this, I became way more present with the people I was interacting with. Conversations became more real and interesting, therefore I felt way more connected to the people that I met, but most importantly, the people that I was traveling with. And so secondly, after observing that I myself was always on my phone, I looked around and noticed that literally everybody around me is constantly on their phone. We're basically robots nowadays. It's kind of freaky. I mean, all the time. Like, take a second. Next time you're able to, just put your phone down and look around at how many people are pretty much like this at a constant. So all I can say is I encourage you to put your phone down for simply an hour and just leave your house without it. Don't put it in your pocket. And just see if you can treat it as a meditation. See how many things that you can notice that you might not have noticed otherwise. Okay, so lesson number 4, this one is probably one of the biggest realizations that I had. Reality will always be completely different from your expectations, I promise you. So initially, while planning for this trip, not only had I set the image in my head of how everything was going to look and feel, but I also set the intention of achieving most, if not all, the things on this list. Film, edit, and upload multiple travel video blogs to YouTube, come home with at least 5 new written songs, get my first tattoo, meditate every single day, write at least 2 articles for Medium, make decent headway into a copy of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, busk at least a few times in each city we were to visit, and finally fall in love with a woman and never go home. But how many of these did I end up checking off my list? I'd say about 1.5. I did indeed get my first tattoo in Edinburgh, which is in Scotland, at an awesome tattoo shop called Watermelon Tattoo. If you're in the area, go hit them up for an epic tattoo because they do an amazing job. You can find their page on Instagram and just their website if you look up Watermelon Tattoo Edinburgh into Google. But looking back on my trip and the expectations that I had, I think the trip would have been more exhausting than anything if I was to actually try to achieve all of the endeavors on that list that I had made. Besides, I badly needed a vacation at the time, and I see that it was most important that I reevaluate what I wanted in life. And what kind of vacation would it have been if I hadn't let go of my attachment to what the vacation should have looked like? Lesson number 5. What traveling truly does is it shoves a mirror in your face. So as we all know, everybody has their own paths and methods of self-discovery, but I would go as far as to say that taking a trip to far-off lands in unfamiliar territory might just be the ultimate ingredient for taking a good hard look at ourselves. In this short life that I've lived, I've learned that checking our egos from time to time is not only ideal for coming into our best self, but also for those around you in this coexistent world that we live in. It's sort of a given that the more time you spend with people, the more you get to know about them, right? And that just kind of goes with really anything, but you can look at traveling as a full-fledged plunge into the practice of friendship, patience, and team perseverance. But what is mentioned all too rarely is this also goes for your relationship with yourself. Spending 3 weeks in Europe with these guys not only showed me underlying characteristics of theirs that I had never seen before, but it also helped me to dismantle my own perception of the world around me, so I was able to look at it from a bird's eye view, so to speak, and in turn put it back together with a new and improved outlook on life. Basically, I clicked the refresh button on awareness and went window shopping for new ideas and understandings. So one way that this works so incomparably is that, well, you're in a whole new world with a whole different set of people. Advantageously, you basically have this ability to be anybody you want to be. A capacity that's not quite as simple when you're living your everyday, routine, normal life, while surrounded by familiar people that know you as being you. Now, when I make this point, I'm not saying go out and deceive people by leading them on. All I'm saying is that your experience is a little bit more malleable when you dive into the unknown. So that brings us to lesson number 6. Every being on this planet has infinite wonder that is just waiting to be discovered. So on our first day in the Netherlands, I just remember us sitting on a train on our way to our Airbnb in Amsterdam, where behind us there was a group of older women squawking in what sounded like southern accents. And I just remember us looking at each other thinking, who are these strange creatures that seem to be speaking an alien language that we haven't heard in about 2 weeks? So it almost seemed as if being gone for just 2 weeks placed us so outside of our usual familiarity, even our own English language with such a stereotypical characteristic such as a southern accent seemed so alien and fresh, right? So again, what I think the lesson here is getting outside of your familiar comfort zone is a means to shedding your lenses, right? It gives us the chance to see things anew and really just simply look at things in a way that we never have before, which to me was the most rewarding lesson that I brought home with me, something that I didn't expect. As you guys know, I work in the food industry, so therefore I'm always seeing different faces throughout the day. And upon getting back from my trip, I tried to utilize this lesson as much as possible by really taking a second to look at each person that I was talking to and really remind myself that each person I interacted with was a completely fresh being with its own story to tell and its own unique characteristics. And I know this is going to sound weird, but have you ever taken a moment to just stare deeply into somebody's eyes? And I don't mean the way you would romantically do so with a lover or anything like that, but really taking that extra second to just analyze the person that I was talking to, not in a judgmental way, but just really seeing their characteristics rather than letting them just brush over your shoulder and go unnoticed. This can be a very powerful tool for not only just curing simple boredom at work, but also just to keep yourself reminded again that there is always uniqueness in each and every person that you come across. And that brings us to lesson number 7. The show must go on. Vacation life, as much as we wish it could, can't last forever, can it? And as much as I would like to think that a perpetual vacation would be the best thing ever, there's just no way that I could actually see this trip being as legendary as it was had it not been for the fact that I was able to come home and reflect on what I've learned and sort of compare my usual routine life to the grand adventure that I had gone on. Because it's really about absorbing what you experience that makes it all that much more valuable and sort of framing it into your lifestyle, right? Taking the lessons that you've learned and somehow figuring out a way to fit them in your daily life, I think is really what's so magical about traveling in the first place. But I will say that I would be lying to you if I wasn't hit hard by the post-holiday blues. And so just a little sub-lesson that I took home with me after realizing that the trip was coming to an end was on our last night. Eric, Ian's dad, decided to take us all out to dinner. It was me, Jake, Ian's fiance, who lives with him in London, as well as Eric, Ian's dad, who took us out to the Shard, which is the tallest building in London. It's the most amazing skyscraper that you could ever experience. It's amazing. Look up the Shard on Google and you'll see what I mean. You've definitely seen it in movies, shots here and there. You see it left and right, but very cool place. While sitting around and having dinner, we were talking about things like meaning of life and purpose and careers and coming into adulthood. And he told us this one thing. He said, guys, when you get home, I want you to remember this one thing. In whatever work you do, find a way to bring the most value that you can. Find a way to serve people in the best way possible so that you're bringing value and purpose to the table. Put the money part second, and for now, just simply focus on the value that you're bringing to people, and I promise you that success will come. And that small bit of advice that he gave to us, I don't know if he realizes that it stuck with me to this day, because since then I've always realized it's not about chasing the compensation that makes you do the best job possible. It's about fully embodying the intention of serving, right? And giving your best value, whether it be a job, whether it be a favor that you're doing for a friend, or whether it even be just having a conversation with somebody, listening and fully being present, rather than just sitting back and waiting for them to finish so that you can respond with whatever you're thinking of the entire time. And contemplating this advice that Eric gave to us really helped me a lot in figuring out what I want to do with the rest of my life, which is, well, not necessarily making YouTube videos for the rest of my life, but helping people through my own experiences and lending a voice among others to guide people with a direction that serves them purpose and meaning. And even just that lesson alone made this trip completely worthwhile and changed the way that I see my future as well as the present moment and how I go about navigating it for the better. Alrighty guys, and to wrap things up, this brings us to our last lesson on the list, and that is to travel as much as you can. And I know that this point is somewhat of a cliche and to be expected, but it's true. Travel as much as you can, especially if you're young. If you're in your 20s or even your 30s and don't have, a kid or a mortgage and have the freedom to do so, just do it. Just go out into the world, see shit. It will change you, I promise. And that right there is an investment in itself, right? Essentially, you're investing in yourself by traveling and going out and putting yourself in uncertain situations where you have no idea what's going to happen. All you know is you're in a whole new world. That is where it's at. That's the ticket right there. And I was only gone for a month. I mean, I can't even imagine the people that are gone for like 5 months who go backpacking in like Thailand, right? You know, like the lessons that they're learning, man. One day. So next time that you're feeling stagnant in any way and the question pops up into your head, when's the last time that I went anywhere? I want you to do me a favor. I want you to run to your computer, purchase a plane ticket to who cares where, but seriously though, make it count and go somewhere that's not boring. Because doing this will set you up for a time and a half of memories, laughs, challenges, epiphanies, and more moments of gratitude than you can keep track of, I promise. I think I've said more than enough on the importance of going places, so I don't want to start to sound like a broken record. So to wrap things up, I just want to part ways by saying I hope that you guys were inspired by this video and gained some sort of urge to make a plan to take a trip as soon as we're out of this whole quarantine mess. But at the very least, I want to hear about your travel stories. So please leave a comment down below with any fun memories of places that you've gone. And as always, I'm calling you guys to action. Please click that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment. Again, let's get into a conversation. Click that like button. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week and staying happy, healthy, productive, and creative. I gotta go edit this video, get it online for you guys. But I'll see you guys in my next video. Much love.